Number 10, that's not garbage. Ingrid Line, a 40-year-old mother of 3 from Seattle, Washington, was brutally murdered back in 2017 after coming home from a Mariners baseball game. She went to the event on a date with 38-year-old John Charlton, whom she had met online about a year before. On April 19th, her former partner reported her missing when she failed to pick up her children from his home. A wellness check was then performed at the woman's house, but officers were far from prepared for what they found inside. Police discovered a 15-inch or 38-centimeter pruning saw left near the bathtub that had human flesh inside it. While searching for more evidence, authorities found some of Ingrid's limbs wrapped in plastic inside the neighbor's trash cans. At the local recycling and garbage plant, even more were discovered. Charlton was the main suspect in the case since he had violent criminal history and his own parents had a restraining order against him. He initially denied the murder allegations for over a year, but he has since fully confessed to the crime. For the murder of Ingrid Line, Charlton was sentenced to 333 months behind bars, which is a little less than 28 years. The judge said she would have given him life in prison without parole if only the law allowed it. Number 9, it happens all the time. Colin Baltazar was accused of killing and decapitating his own 70-year-old mother in a quiet neighborhood in Shoreline, Washington. Laurie Collins, Baltazar's mother, was a budget manager for Seattle Pacific University. The day she was killed, her neighbor noticed that her car was still parked in her driveway when she should have been at work. Loud thumping and screaming were also heard by the neighbor coming from Laurie's house at around 2 a.m. So officers came the next morning at 9 a.m. to conduct a welfare check. When authorities asked Baltazar about the screaming, he claimed that he and his mother had gotten into an argument and that, quote, it happened all the time. But when deputies were unable to reach Collins by phone, they forced their way into the house to see what really happened. According to news outlets, Collins' decapitated body was found in the upstairs bedroom near a baseball bat. Baltazar was arrested at the scene for the gruesome and violent murder. Baltazar is now facing second-degree murder charges and is currently being held on $2 million bail. He was supposed to be formally charged for the crime on July 5th, but there has not been any recent public updates on the case. Number 8, firefight. A fatal shooting happened in a Seattle, Washington parking lot when an insane man holding a gun opened fire on 2 women in their cars. The attack was completely random and left one of the victims dead after getting shot in the face 3 times in February 2021. The shooter was identified on social media as Greg Taylor by one of the man's friends. There were several witnesses to the crime and many of them called 911 after hearing multiple shots being fired. One of the calls came from the second woman in the car while her friend lay dying. The girl was unable to give their exact location, but police arrived just moments later. The suspect was warned to drop his weapon, but he ignored their warnings. He raised his weapon again, this time directing it towards the officers. A firefight soon broke out between law enforcement and the deranged gunman, but they were able to take him down quickly. Officers then turned their focus towards finding the 2 victims that had been shot at. They found the girls, but one of them had already died before they arrived. The name of the women were not released, but they found no connection between them and the suspect. The terrible tragedy serves as a reminder that accidents like this can happen at any time or place, and that people are capable of carrying out awful crimes even on complete strangers. Number 7, Alexander J. 62-year-old Kim Hayes was on her way to work at Harborview Medical Center, where she served as a nurse when she was attacked by a homeless man. Seattle has been plagued by crimes from homeless encampments over the last few years. In March 2022, Hayes was targeted by 40-year-old Alexander J. while she made her way through the Chinatown International District. She was walking up the stairs when, out of nowhere, Jay grabbed her and threw her roughly down the cement steps. The healthcare worker suffered 3 broken ribs and a broken clavicle. She was rushed to the same hospital that she had worked at for 25 years and received surgery from her colleagues to treat her injuries. Apparently, this was not the first time Jay had a run-in with the law. He had a long criminal history, including theft, charges of burglary, drug possession, selling stolen property, multiple counts of domestic violence, and auto theft. On top of all of that, he had been given 15 bench warrants for failing to show up to his hearings. Also, it's since been reported that within hours of him pushing Hayes down the stairs, he stabbed another woman and beat another man to death at a nearby Metro Transit bus stop. Alexander J. was charged with murder and 2 counts of second-degree assault and is currently behind bars on $5.6 million bond. He's set to appear in court on August 29th, but no news has been released regarding his sentencing. Number 6, STARBEAST. A woman from Vancouver, Washington Washington was denied a restraining order against her estranged husband just before he viciously stabbed her to death on November 7, 2021. Monica Murrah, or Star as she was nicknamed, had a rocky relationship with her husband Michael Murrah. She stated on several occasions that Michael had threatened to kill himself while they were arguing, and even went as far as putting a knife by their bed when they'd fight. Michael also allegedly choked and hit Star many times while high on drugs. Star claimed her husband had also physically abused their 7-year-old son and that she was scared for their lives. Unfortunately, Star's attempts to receive permanent restraining orders against Michael was denied by a court in August 2021 thanks to insufficient grounds just months before her murder. According to the Oregonian news site, police were called to the Murrah residence at 10:40 a.m. that Sunday morning, where they found Michael holding a blood-stained knife. They soon discovered Star's body with multiple stab wounds in her neck. They rushed her to the hospital, but she was later pronounced dead from her injuries. Their young son was also at home at the time of the attack, but was thankfully left unharmed. When questioned by the authorities, Michael claimed that he'd killed Star, which he called STARBEAST, to fulfill prophecy. The man was obviously beyond delusional, maybe partly due to his extensive substance abuse problem, but he was still taken into custody for the crime. For the gruesome killing of Mania Star Murray, Michael was charged with first-degree murder and held on $2 million bail, set to be arraigned on November 19th. In Clark County Superior Court, he pleaded not guilty and was ordered to undergo a competency evaluation by the judge. Since then, there have been no updates regarding the case, and his trial date is still on hold. Do you think there was an actual prophecy, or do you think Michael was just crazy? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. Number 5. Uncle Husband. 44-year-old Timothy McNamara was found dead in Belize from a gunshot wound to his head, and police were later accused of setting the whole thing up to look like murder. Tracy Shannon Nessel had fallen in love with McNamara, who was 22 years older than she was. Oh, and to top things off, he was actually her biological uncle. They had met each other in 2012 when the two were visiting her grandparents in Soap Lake, Washington. At the time, McNamara was going through his third divorce and had an immediate connection with Nessel, his young niece. But Nessel claimed they, quote, didn't know each other in that way, and that she never knew him as her uncle. The two sides of the family didn't spend much time together, so they felt like they weren't doing anything particularly wrong. She said that they fell in love and that their souls were instantly connected. McNamara had adult children from previous marriages, and they were understandably disturbed by the pair's incestuous developing relationship. In order to escape scrutiny, Nessel and McNamara ran away to Belize using a $240,000 insurance payout that they used to buy a farm in the Central American country. The man's children stopped talking to their father, and as their family's relationship fell apart, so did McNamara's finances. In December 2014, Nessel heard a gunshot outside of their home and said she found McNamara lying on their porch. Initially, she said she had no involvement in the crime and was framed by police for the murder. But later, in March 2022, 8 years after the incident, she was found guilty of participating in the willful and unlawful killing of her uncle husband. Sounds like the relationship was doomed from the start. Number 4. Break-in gone wrong. A 36-year-old man from Gig Harbor, Washington was killed by his neighbor after trying to break into the man's home in July of 2022. Neither of the men in the case were identified by name, and the incident took place after the now-deceased man had an argument with his girlfriend, who later went next door to stay for the night. After finding out she was with the neighbor, he attempted to let himself into the home to see her. Apparently, the woman had a no-contact order against her boyfriend, so he was not supposed to be anywhere near her. While trying to get into the home, he was accused of threatening his girlfriend and others who were inside. The homeowner, protecting himself and his property, then shot and killed the man on his back porch, where he was later found by police. Recognized as a case of self-defense, officers did not charge the man who fired with murder or any crimes for that matter. But the investigation is still ongoing, and once it's complete, it will be moved to the prosecutor's office. Number 3. Cold case. A cold case dating back to 1998 has just been solved recently in 2022, and a woman's fiancé is now suspected of hiring a hitman. On August 22, 1998, James Christopher Johnson found his fiancé's body in their apartment's bedroom closet in Arlington, Washington. Johnson reported to authorities that some bags and coins were missing from the space, along with the Honda Civic that belonged to the woman. When police got to the scene to investigate, they found no signs of forced entry or even a struggle. Johnson told officers about a suspicious man, someone who was given Sincata's old computer and was upset that it wasn't working well. The suspect was identified as a 54-year-old man named Bobby Joe Leonard, but no concrete evidence was ever found to convict Leonard, so the case went cold after no other leads were discovered. Fast forward to July 2022. While pleading guilty to the murder of Andrea Sincata, Leonard also confessed that a man he suspected to be the woman's then fiancé offered to pay him $5,000 to kill her. But this allegation has not yet been proven, and Johnson was placed under home confinement until his next trial that will take place on September 12th. Number 2. Revenge. A father from Spokane, Washington was accused of killing his daughter's boyfriend after finding out he had sold her into a sex trafficking ring back in 2021. The young woman's father, 60-year-old John Eisenman, is currently being held on $1 million bond after getting charged with first-degree murder. In October 2020, Eisenman discovered that his young daughter had been sex trafficked and later found out that her own boyfriend was responsible. One night, Eisenman found out where the boyfriend would be and drove him to his location in Airway Heights. He waited for the 19-year-old to arrive and then abducted him. He tied him up and put him into his car's trunk before hitting him in the head with a cinder block and stabbing him to death. Eisenman then abandoned the vehicle in a remote area with the body still left inside. The remains of the girl's ex-boyfriend were not found until a year later, and Eisenman was charged with first-degree murder. But new evidence suggests the boy had nothing to do with the sex trafficking allegations at all, and that Eisenman was high on methamphetamine when the murder took place. Number 1. Capitol Hill Massacre. A party turned into an absolute nightmare back in March of 2006 when a man with a gun decided to end the lives of 6 innocent people. Kyle Huff was at a party after the Better Off on Dead rave on March 24th in Seattle, Washington. He kept to himself for most of the night though, until about 6 a.m. when he left the event to retrieve some guns from his truck. He immediately started shooting people sitting outside the home before going back into the building to continue his rampage. He fired more than 300 rounds in total until he spotted a police officer that had come to respond to the scene. He then turned the gun on himself, ending his own life. There was no clear motive for the senseless killing spree, and with the suspect now deceased, it's unlikely detectives will ever know the reason behind this terrible crime. Thanks for watching. Which one of these true crime stories surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We'll see you next time on The Bad Badger.